shows that we're not sloppy. I ain't heard that 100 times this week. So, Loons, I've learned a lot on this subject. As I was telling those that, did I go off? Hello. Okay, let me get this. Thank you. What I have learned is blowing my absolute mind. However, I'm a learner, and I thrive to learn, especially crazy stuff like this. Let's say there's a child that is born. Has anybody ever known a child born, and I'm just going to use, for lack of better words, it's just like they're bad. You know, they're just, it's like, they don't even have to be raised by parents that act out. They just act out. They just, it's just unruly. I've known a few. And it's like, no, what happened?
Right.
What happened in that program? You know? What I have learned is that our DNA and our chromosomes can become altered. That means that the DNA and chromosomes that you are born with are not the DNA you die with. Two things with this. As we've talked about, our soul, a woman carries a baby in her womb, and the word for womb is soul. So if her soul is creating a soul, right, because spirit comes from God, then what's in her soul is going to make up that soul. Okay? Chromosomes and DNA. So when you're like, well, that's how the world works. Well, here's the thing. Let's say somebody's ingrained one way. Well, because of trauma, the father's life or the mother's life, once that baby is conceived, a couple things happen. When a baby is conceived, the mother's DNA changes on two levels. Well, I guess on the conception one, because of sex. That's why the Bible talks about adultery and that very highly. Because unprotected sex, all the way across the board, changes DNA. You want another one? It also causes cancer. You want to talk about that for a little bit? The other thing is trauma in a person's life. Let's say Jason goes through trauma and never develops a symptom. His kid could start showing symptoms of something that never happened. Does that not blow your mind? Totally blew. Isn't this the course that you said that you have? Kind of goes in this a little bit or not?
Yeah.
So what that means is what everybody has always thought, especially the church world and school. This was the whole thing of special ed was. What everybody thought was, okay, little Johnny acts like this, so we need to do cognitive behavior therapy on little John. Well, if little Johnny never experienced trauma, then he's not going to know what you're talking about. You can address the symptoms that he's acting, but that's only going to do so much because he was created that way. He was wired that way. This is deep stuff, guys. This is crazy. My mind was just blown the whole time studying this. Because it is possible that people can commit a crime, and if they keep digging, they could possibly get off and be said that they were created to do it. And that's according to 23andMe DNA. What they have found out so far. So, think about it. God's been teaching us about soberness. And now he's really taking us to the deep end of the pool. Well, there's got to be a reason why he's moving very quickly on our pool. As I was studying this, they were able to actually go and see that maybe the parents of that child never had sin or trauma. Not just, I'm talking about sin that causes deep wounds, it's past, or trauma. But maybe grandma or grandpa did. Or maybe grandma had sex a whole lot, and her DNA was altered by those she had sex with. And so when she had a child by her husband, what did Jesus say to the woman at the well? And the woman said, oh, you're right, you got 4. So now her DNA isn't even a perfect match as it was when she was born. It's crazy, don't it? My mind was blown. Like, really blown. It helps us validate something. Schools and therapists. Spent 4 hours with a therapist on Thursday. She's like, so what do you think issues are? And I'm like, they're trauma. I'm like, they're so. I'm like, but I'm a pastor, so I believe that all wounds come from sin and trauma, where you're a social worker, and so, you don't add the Jesus part. You just add that it's trauma. And she's like, I feel like I need to be on the other side of the table, and you teach me everything you know. She's like, this is good. And she was a believer, so she was getting it. And as I began reading this, and the special ed director of Granite City is a Christian too, so I was able to talk to her on both levels. I'm like, you know what this proves? Scientifically proves that generational curses. See, we as the church has always taught that once you become saved, generational curses stop. They have books written out by millions. It's a lie. When you get saved, what happens? Anybody? What have you learned? When you get saved, what happens? Your spirit gets perfected. Is your spirit your soul? Not at all. Why did he give us dunamis power? For our soul. Dunamis power deals with our soul. The blood deals with our spirit. That's why we have to have them both. So, it is possible, according to scientific proof, I read on 23andMe and another DNA chromosome place, that says that a child can inherit behaviors down the line. More than just hair color, skin type, maybe a lazy eye like I have that I don't know who it came from. Type things. That's big. Because how do you disprove God then? Because if his word teaches us about generational curses, way before we learn through science that our DNA can change and therefore bring about a negative occurrence, that's a curse. That's brought down generation. Why is this important? Because it changes the focal point. It changes the focal point from the person that's exhibiting the symptoms and dealing with them to saying, now we have to deal with the whole family. than like the special ed department says. That is the course of action. That is the AC, is that E, is that what it's called? Is that the acronym?
ACEs?
Yeah. But that,
childhood experience.
right. That is what they are trained on. However, schools don't get in families. Right?
Schools don't get trauma training at all.
No, they are. That's what, because that's what her and I was talking about for like 4 hours. And they have to. Because they have to know how to deal with what's coming up. I mean, look at what's going on in their school. But they can deal with that all day long. But if that's their makeup, because of a situation that happened to somebody else in their family, then we have to not just focus on this, we have to focus on a wider sphere of the situation. Well, schools aren't getting into homes, right? Schools aren't sending social workers to homes, because here's what's happening. Social workers are trying to deal with kids that are exhibiting behaviors that may not be something from them. That's why they're not getting any better. Here's the other thing. That's why doctors are medicating kids that are exhibiting behaviors, and the behaviors really don't decrease. Is because the symptoms is not the problem. However, what they are learning is if we deal with the whole family, here's the thing. You can change the chromosomes. You can change the DNA of that person. Totally blew my mind. Totally scientifically proven. And everything scripturally backed up. That's why me hugging someone for 15 seconds can change their soul. Proven fact. You can go exercise for not even that long. Release chemicals in the brain that's supposed to change how you feel. I mean, that's some pretty, to me, that's amazing stuff. I love that stuff. But, like I was talking to my friend, the schools really need the churches. Because schools don't see the sin of it. The schools don't get into the family issues. The schools only deal with what is present in their classroom or at the moment. So if churches start rising up, that's why getting the kids are important. We get the traumatized kids. We get all the kids that are out there. Then the goal is that through getting them, that they, along with Kathy and Sean, go get the parents. So while the kids are actually getting cognitive behavior therapy downstairs through Sunday school and church and learning boundaries and all that great stuff, then if we are healed and we go through some training, then we can have a spiritual and physical influence on the parents. So we're not just changing kids' life as far as their behaviors. We're changing the whole dynamics of the family. And guess who gets to have a better life? The kids. And isn't that, I know that's why, for me, this study is important. This is how good God is. This study is now, that we're going through, being adopted through RPI and being taught throughout the other churches. Because we're on to something. Not just that we're onto something, but Danae, who's coming for Spirit Quest, has no clue what I'm teaching. She's going through this class herself. And the Lord has already given her, just downloading amazing stuff for us coming next year. I'm so excited. So we know soul wounds are created by sin and trauma. Today, we know that stirring in our minds about what's going on in our life is no different than the man that stirred around the tombs. Just think about it. When you get caught in your mind, what do? Bash yourself, man. Talk about all the things you did wrong, how you could have done it better, or bash the other person on what they did, and hey, you still could have done it better. It causes hate and strife and division. Right? No different than the man that physically beat himself up. Well, when you get to that place, have you ever gotten enraged from what is going on out here? And then somebody, comes in your presence, and we're like, what's wrong with them? Right? And they don't want to be around you. You're untouchable. You're same thing. Same thing. That's why the Bible says that we should wake up every morning with a renewed mind. Now that sounds easy just saying, but it's even easier, however we don't apply it, because it takes work. I say it's easier because Jesus Christ gives us what we're supposed to renew our mind with. Right? He says, think on these things. What's lovely, what's kind. So when the enemy's coming in trying to bombard all the negative, we have to take the time and say, cancel that. Lovely, kind, peaceful, generous, long-suffering. Right? See, that's the next part we have to start going to. How many wants to be healed? Does anybody really want to be? I do. I want to be different. But I want to be all that God created before I was in my mother's womb. I would like to die seeing Lenny as Lenny is seen by Christ. Right? I believe that to Paul's best ability, he died as Christ designed it. Not saying he was perfect. What I'm saying is he didn't die a murderer. He died better and not bitter. That's all my desire is. That's my desire for you. That's why we're learning it. That's my desire for the kids downstairs. So, we've talked about, in the past, rejection. And that's not been a friendly one, was it? I was very shocked on the statistics of people that feel like rejection apparently brings entitlement. I haven't studied that all the way out, but people who are rejected take on a spirit of entitlement. You think about being rejected, thrown away, it's almost like somebody saying, you had no entitlement. You know what I mean? That you had nothing. You had no connection. Think of the generation that we deal with that think they're entitled. If you go back, were they rejected? We talked about abandonment. Last week we talked about humiliation. And this week we're going to talk about betrayal. Last week when I talked about humiliation, we just used Jesus as example. And we talked about that humiliation on the pendulum of pride was on the opposite, was a symptom of humiliation that we can take on pride. Pride is considered to be as wrong as witchcraft in the eyes of the Lord. So you see how quickly things can go down. I never realized just how quickly it can just go. So we know to be rejected means to throw back. To be abandoned means that somebody who had control over you has given up control. There's a church in Granite City where the pastor has left to go and do what she feels God is calling her to do. And right now, the new pastor is dealing with a bunch of people who feel abandoned. Because the pastor had control over them as authority. And so instead of just get a new pastor, they took it personal and have soul wounds from it that they're having to deal with now. We talk about humiliation, which causes a person to have a painful loss of pride, self-respect, and dignity. They feel mortified. This week, it's betrayal. Anybody ever been betrayed? Anybody? I'm talking about real betrayal. It's not fun. It's not pretty. And there's a whole lot of symptoms that go right along with it. Trust being the very first one. So what is betrayal? The definition in Webster is the act of betraying someone or something, or the fact of being betrayed. It's a violation. It's a violation. That is a legal term, according to the Word of God. So not only is it that they just, that somebody's come against them, or they're just betrayed, but a spiritual, legal sin has now been committed. Just deep, but good. It's a legal violation of a person's trust and confidence, of a moral standard. It's also the elevation of something hidden or secret. Most people that are going to betray you or talk behind your back does exactly that. Behind your back. It's not really betrayal, they do it in front. It's just mean. Here is some symptoms of betrayal. Backstabbing, disloyalty. People who have been betrayed exhibit double-mindedness. They exhibit faithlessness. They exhibit falselessness. They exhibit infidelity. Scripturally, a person could become infertile because they have a wound of betrayal. That's why it's important that as we do the 5 wounds, the next is we start doing the symptoms of the wounds. So that we can identify and go deep into the wound, we can begin to see the snake for what it is. Because I don't know if any of you are watching the cases of the things that I share with you, but it made complete sense. Remember that season that God was saying to us that He called us to go out into all the world, create disciples, signs and wonders would follow us, and that, people would get saved, we would baptize them, they'd talk in tongues, and man, we were just eating that up. But there was a part, and she was so right, there's a part we like to forget. And that is a part that says we will pick up serpents and snakes and deal with them. Because in our minds, everything's literal. And most of you are like, I am not picking up a snake. Neither am I. Got lawnmowers for that, right? But remember with Paul, shipwrecked, picked up a bunch of wood. What was he? The snake was what? Hidden. Betrayal is hidden. But what drove it out? Fire. Do a study on that. About just put snakes, not like fire. And just see what all you can get. And then put it with the word and see just how much it changes things. That's why, if we want to know, and not always do we. See, all of this has been about individual. About Sean, about Julie, about Mindy, about Jason, about
me, about Don. This is about, before we can deal with families, with more than just one, we have to deal with the one. Then if we can get one healed, delivered, and set free, it's not that I can then move on. It's they with me can move on. Because what happens is a non-believer begins to believe. And you get a new believer believing and understanding. That's why it's important that sometimes I preach and sometimes I teach. Is because, like this part that we've been on, this series, been long, I get it. But we have to get it. Because I want you to think to yourselves, since we've been on this series, I probably have spent 8 hours preaching. How many snakes have you killed? Here's a question. How many snakes have you seen in a dream that you've killed that are slayed? I'll say none, no mine. I'm aware, and I'm beginning to get to that place. There's a lot of wounds that I'm identifying, hey, I've got that. I see that. Learning what we have control over and what we don't have control over. What meaning, see this whole authority and obedience thing isn't just pastor and people. It's Satan has authority. And there's times we have to be obedient. If we sin, we become obedient to the enemy. That's why, it's not that we will never fall. It's why we have to be protected at all times. It's why our walk has to matter. Because you can be an ambassador of Jesus Christ all day long. Jesus be for you and walk with you. But the moment you make that mistake, and it's exhibited with Peter. Peter walked with Jesus. I mean, come on. Best friends with Jesus, if you would. In his inner circle. Jesus trusted him. However, who was it that Jesus had to rebuke? Who was it that denied Jesus 3 times? See, Peter didn't realize it. Peter's like, I would never, I'll never turn my back on you. There's something hidden he didn't even know he had. But if we begin to say, and this has kind of been my prayer, Lord, I want to be better and not bitter. I want to be a man of example. I got to my counselor. I do not want to be the next generation that just pushes another generation of crap onto another generation. That's just not fair. It's just not right. It's not right that other people that our kids are carrying our problems because we're too proud or we think we don't have a problem to deal with. Well, we've learned that every one of us has soul wounds. In those wounds, some are bigger than others. Some of them have multiple of the same wound. And we're going to start learning what lives in wounds. Now, some of you are like, well, this is getting far-fetched. Well, if you take a microscope and you look a wound under a microscope, what do you find, Julie? And is that alive or dead? Is it moving? Is it eating? So we would say that there's an enemy that is eating them alive. Yes or no? Right? I never want to preach anything that's not right. I never want to give you false understanding. Remember, what happens in the natural is a type and shadow of the Spirit at all times. So, if we can say scientifically proven that there are serpents, It blows my mind how much people can't get that there's a God. Scripture talks about serpents. If you do the study, a serpent can just be anything that's just demonic, really. That's a lie. Well, something that's eating somebody's flesh, I would say, is demonic in a lie. That's not a good thing. We don't go around saying, here, get some of mine. Right? I love the word. I really do. It's so amazing. I say that because it's fun. It's fun to be able, or to me it is, because I'm a learner, to hear something of the world and be able to say, man, that lines up with the Bible. Now I need to do some studying about it. Now I need, here, studying all day long without application is what? Nothing. If you trained all day long, Mindy, and nobody ever applied it, how successful would your job be? Because your job is not based on what a good trainer you are. Your job is based on how many people exhibit what you've trained them. Seriously. If you have a trainer that's training, and the people they're training never changes, you fire the trainer and get a new trainer. Because something's not, the synergy is not working. Something, it's not that your trainer's bad, it's just the atmosphere is not working. It can all be the students' fault. But you have to find somebody that is going to get their attention to want to be like, wow, that's mind-blowing. Wow, I need that in my life. And when you are a learner and you want to apply, there's nothing more amazing than when you have a positive outcome. I don't think. I love when God teaches us stuff here at church. We apply it, and then I get to hear behind the scenes. Not always to you guys, but behind the scenes, I'll have somebody contact me through Facebook and be like, that was just amazing. Here's one. Here's a soul in mine. I don't like being touched. Nah, I don't mind hugs and everything. But having somebody come and jump on me and give me a hug is sometimes more my hug. Right? That is a big soul image. I feel like, not in a prideful way, and very humility, because I make a decision, or else, if we don't decide to change, then God replaces us. He's not replaces you as a human being, but He will move you out of the way to protect what He's trying to do. I don't want to be. I enjoy what I know what I'm called to do, and I want to be a part of that. But I can't have an expectation of my leadership, or my church, or my congregation, or the kids, if I myself am not willing to say, hey. Times that I would want to get angry. And I sit there and I just stay calm. It's little things, but we're slaying. We're slaying. We're healing. And if we all are working it, then it's not ever that these things will never come to your life again. It's just when they do, we deal with it at the body level or the atmosphere level of it. And it's not able to penetrate in us. Because why? What did we learn on Kathy Joe preached? The armor of God. We're listening to sermons. We're speaking the armor of God over ourselves. Like Jason taught, we are reminding ourselves that we're a lighthouse, and that God's a lighthouse, and that His light is healing, and that His light will show the way, and that His light will change things. I mean, what I preach, even though people may not go saying, I'm going to preach what Pastor preaches, everything's lining up. Everything's lining up to the point that it's almost, you begin to question if He ain't on His way. Betrayal leads to a symptom of fraud, giving misinformation, lying, tail-bearing, and trickery. Now, what is the symptoms of somebody that is healed from a soul wound of betrayal? They will start exhibiting. Now, I really want you to get this, because God's giving this to me right now as I'm speaking. Think about what has gone on the last week. Think about what I am calling people to. I'm calling you to it because God's calling you to it. And we're going to be calling to it together. People who are healing a betrayal will exhibit. Now tell me if this isn't like a job description. Dependability, reliability, committed, trustworthy. They will have defense in the right areas. They will know how to protect. They will know how to safeguard. And they will know how to shield others. I went a little deeper into the work environment with this. And all those things I said is what is in a leadership book that, in the leadership book, it taught them that basically the symptoms of betrayal is people you don't want to hire. And people you want to hire because you want people to have your back is the people that exhibit the symptoms of somebody who does not have a wound of betrayal. Now some of you are like, oh, is that all really right and true? Honey, it is now illegal for employers to be able to determine if they want to heal you or heal you, hire you or not, by your Facebook.
Yeah.
By just your Facebook picture. You know what all? I started a study on that. I had to close it. But they're able to take a grid that whoever made and put it against your Facebook. And if it meets 10 criteria on this, you are non-hireable. You know what they look at? Your pictures. Your pictures tell your whole story. They don't have, that's the first thing. That's the main thing they look at, is your pictures. The second thing is, they want to see how defensive you are on your Facebook. They want to see what you say to other people. Because if you're defensive on Facebook, you're going to be defensive in their company, and they don't want you. Because you're not going to cause a good synergy. And they want people who are going to bring out, it's just the whole reason we gather together is so that we can bring out the good in each other. Well, the whole reason that they want to build a good team is so they bring out the good in each other. You get one bad employee, it changes the whole dynamic. Leonard Johnson was on so many jobs, not because he knew what he was doing or because he was the best employee, but because no one could build morale like Leonard Johnson. And that is an honest to God truth. He kept on laughing. We worked, and I worked with him. We worked in a very high risk. I'm telling you, people died where we worked. My job was the replacement of a young man that did die. He fell off the stack at Grand City. So it was very risky. People were on edge. And you're talking about young idiots. And what I mean by that is people that after work go get drunk or, have girlfriends and break up. And so you never know what mind frame they come into work on. Well, if you don't have good morale, what's going to happen? It's going to stir where they're at. Well, Leonard knew how to go and find them people out by telling a story. And it changed the dynamics of the whole entire trailer of people. They would just leave him in there. No lie. And it's good to work with your dad sometimes because you get perks from it. Like riding around in his truck all day and not have to work. $50 an hour.
Yeah.
And him having to work. No. was fun. I'm like, all right, God, we're getting this. I'm wanting to stay like last week on you. Because I believe that if we learn what you went through and how you handled it, because you handled it as a man, you handled it under the strength of the Holy Ghost. Meaning, you did not handle it as God, you handled it as one of us who would be saved and have the power of the Holy Ghost behind us. Meaning that it's not unfair to use Jesus as an example and say, well, he was Jesus. Remember, he left kingship up there. So, the greatest betrayal of all. Which was Judas. You know what Judas's name was? The meaning was praise. Same name Judas is. Judah. Judah also means praise. Judas also means praise. One operated for the enemy, one operated for God. Judas wanted praise. You can go to chapter 26 in Matthew. And it talks about the betrayal. Now, you have a wound of betrayal. I'm not speaking that over you. Yeah, you go back. You have a wound of betrayal, meaning somebody betrayed. Let's read. How did Jesus handle it? Starting with verse 1, it says, when Jesus had finished saying all these things, he said to his disciples, as you know, the Passover is 2 days away, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified. He already knew trouble was brewing. Did it stop him? Did he become paralyzed? Did he talk about it? Remember, Judas, was his treasurer. So we're not talking about just some man. We're talking that Jesus chose the one to betray him to walk with him everywhere he went and to know everything there was to know about Jesus. How many of us would do that if we knew somebody's going to betray us? As a pastor, we have no choice. Then the chief priest and the elders of the people assembled in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas. And they schemed to arrest Jesus secretly and kill him. But not during the festival, they said, or they may be a riot among the people. So this was something, I mean, if you think about it, this is very deep. This is very strategically planned. Judas isn't even involved yet. How many times have we been caught in an act of betrayal and afterwards we were like, oh, that's what that was? You know? You kind of fell into it. And then afterwards you felt dirty. I mean, a good one I can think of, I know you keep hearing me say this, but it's something that the church itself has to get under control is when we talk about each other in a negative connotation. Next, Jesus is in Bethany. While Jesus was in Bethany in the home of Simeon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume, which she poured on his head as he was reclining at the table. There's a lot in this. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. Now here's a woman who didn't follow Jesus. But it was like that first time comer that they walked in, and you can just see that it's like I told Jason, one of Jason's family, when Jason brought something in to give to the Lord, I'm like, it was like watching the most broken person bringing, no matter the expense or not, the thing that meant the most, and in his mind, that he felt that he needed to give a gift to God. Many of us would have been like, but in the moment, Jason was to a place with God that it wasn't about the price that he was about to pay, but he understood the price that he paid. And when we realize that it's not about the price we're about to pay, but the price he paid, the amount doesn't matter. However, that's to the first person, to the new believer. That's the high the new believer is on. That's how much the new believer knows they need. This is what a spirit familiarity is. This is the one that's already been saved, walking with Christ, and I'm in the ministry. They get indignant. Why this waste? All they could do is see money. All they could do is see the money. They asked, this perfume could have been so. How many has either given something to the church, financially, materially, and somebody say that know that you did it? Well, we could have done this with it. Do you know that according to Scripture that cancels the whole deal legally? In the spiritual realm, it says, though you gave nothing. Then they tried to act like spiritualists, meaning people who really aren't spiritualists, and they themselves would not do it. However, they're going to act like one right now. What would you call it? A hater. This perfume could have been sold at a high price, and the money given to the poor. Do you see the money in this? You know, Scripture says the root, or the love of money is the root of all evil. How many things have we talked about this? That money was kind of part of it. It's not money, because God said money is everything. God said that He created us to create wealth. However, what He did not create us is to make money a god that we serve. That's why I said it on Thursday to those that were here. I want you to go write down the 5 things that keep you from doing what God wants you to do. Not what Lenny wants you to do, not what your job title is here. That God, that you know ultimately to be sold out to God, doing what He wants you to do. What are the top 5 things, you probably don't have to pass 2, that you choose? Now this is important here. That you choose to not be obedient to Christ. What's disobedience? Rebellion. And some of you are like, well, that's far-fetched. No, it's not. We just have to call it what it is. That could be why we are the way we are. That could be why sicknesses are the way they are now. That could be why the worry is in our life. That could be why our marriages are the way they are. Remember, that are not fitting. Aware of this, Jesus said to them, why are you bothering this woman? Can you imagine? I don't know about you, but the whole reason that I am very enthusiastically about following God is because usually the first 2 times I say no. By the 3rd time, I realize that God's talking, and this is my last warning. And so I've done wasted 2 warnings with you guys. So now we're all on the same boat, right? And then it's like, okay, full speed ahead, let's go. He begins to tell them something that they aren't looking at. Many of us get blindsided by inaction, okay? We don't take the time to say, okay, that water spills. Is there something? I'm not trying to say make something out of nothing. I'm saying take the time and say, God, are you trying to speak to me about something? He begins to tell them, why are you bothering this woman? And then he begins to give them a secret. He says, she has done a very beautiful thing to me. The poor you will always have with you, but you won't always have me. When she poured this perfume on my body, she did it to prepare me for burial. Before somebody died and they mummied them, they would put something on them. All the people around could think about was, why is this nutcase breaking open something that could very well cost $700, a perfume of this much, and waste it? Well, wow, you're saying that about God? Number 1. Number 2, that's a lot of judgment to be accountable for. And number 3, and this is why in our homes and in our relationships, that's why when Ryan comes to me and says, we have to give a certain amount of money, and I don't fight it, whether we have it or not, or vice versa. Because I never know, because God doesn't always tell everybody everything. Because not every day am I listening to God. Not every day is He. But we never know what is in it. To her, it could have just been, here's God. With the price He paid for me, what's this compared? Just that mindset. And here Jesus is like, she had no clue. But she's preparing me for what's to come. What's the Bible say? Signs and wonders follow those that believe. If signs and wonders aren't following, then we're not believers. Which means we lack the faith. Truly, I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, listen to this. Let's say Mindy goes to Julie and says, I want to eat your bacon. I'm being extreme, but I'm just saying. Okay, after you get your soul into it, who knows what you'll do? When it comes to you and says, you need to empty our bacon. Now, someone say, well, that's a very stupid thing to do. Indignant disciples. Here's the thing. What Mindy is saying is, I know my God. He's the giver and taker of all things. Is that not what Job said? He giveth and he taketh away. The Word of God says, I love a cheerful giver. A cheerful giver isn't somebody that gives to the penny. A cheerful giver is somebody, do you not like cheerful givers? Do you not like when somebody opens their wall and says, how much you want? Right? Am I right? Abundance, right? We like abundance. We're supposed to be abundant people. But we reap what we sow. Now, all through the Word, backed up. The Lord could deal with her about that, and all she could know is, I just know that I'm supposed to do this. They do it. Now, many would go and start watching their bank account. Or watching their mailboxes for money to come. But And then all of a sudden she gets a phone call. And somebody she loves very deeply gets saved. Was it worth it? Think about it. Not always is our giving connected to financial giving. Sometimes our financial giving, that's why the Bible talks about it. God knows what's connected to your heart. Money. It's what rules the world. It's the God that he has to fight against in our life. And if we're going to cut the God of our life out, then we have to cut it. How do you do that? By come against it. I'm not trying to get my head. I'm trying to get you to understand a pretty good principle. It's just like, now some people abuse this, and it's not about abuse. But I'm a believer. It's just like yesterday. I know what I need in my life. I know where I'm at in my life. I know where my kid is. I know where some other people are. I also know that healings are connected to financial giving. I also know that salvation of other people is connected to financial giving. I also know that favor is connected to financial giving. There's a reason why he created the blood and money. And why blood and money can't mix. And so yesterday I told Ryan, I'm like, into your wallet. There was a woman, totally crazy. Crazy than that word. I mean, I'm like, just go open your wallet and just give her whatever you can. If it's $100 bill, you give it to her. If it's $200 bill, you give it to her. If it's $10, you give it to her. So he gave it to her in obedience, because in our eyes, when we give, we do not give to the person. We give to God. God tells us who to give it to or where to sow it into, and therefore God knows what he's doing. And then she starts talking to him about going to her safe deposit box and getting tickets, and that she won a lottery. I don't know. But it was being obedient. And it was like knowing that God was right in the beginning. But it doesn't feel good always. But sometimes we just have to do that. So look at all of this that we're leading up to. Truly I tell you, wherever this gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will always be told in her memory. She just got a legacy. She didn't ask for it. She was just trying to love on Jesus. And Jesus thought so much of that she's in the Bible. I don't know about you, but that's good to have a story written about you. Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priest and asked, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for the opportunity to handle him. On the first day of the festival of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where do you want us to make preparations for you to eat the Passover?" He replied, "Go into the city to a certain man and tell him, 'The teacher says, my appointed time is near. I'm going to celebrate the Passover with my disciples at your house.'" If you want, think about this. If these were your employees, would you want to hang out with them the way they acted? Think about it. Yet he's still, even the one that's going to betray him, he's going to go and eat with him. So how did he act with the people that were betraying him? With love. He was already forgiving them. They didn't even have to ask for forgiveness. And they were in there. They knew not, here they had just followed Jesus for 3 years. He had been teaching them for 3 years. Yet, I'm not quite sure any of them grasped it. That's why I write you guys. Because I don't like surprise. And if you will hear what you're being taught, then you're prepared for anything that comes. A prepared soldier is a good soldier. An unprepared soldier is a sloppy soldier. Verse 20. When the evening came, Jesus was reclining at the table with the 12. And while they were eating, he said, "Truly I tell you," so he even lets it out, "one of you will betray me." Could you imagine us all sitting down and me looking at the wall? And I'm pretty blunt. I'll be like, quit talking about me, because I know you are, but to like be, it's pretty deep. I know one of you are about ready to cut me out. That's hard. And still sit there and eat. And not throw a fit, right? So right now he's exhibiting to show us how our actions should be during a time of betrayal. Not what you think. Most of you know me pretty well. Most of you know I've been here long enough to watch people come and watch people go. Most of you have been here long enough to know what people have said about me and not said. Most of you have been here long enough to know who's betrayed me and who has not. But we keep going. Right? Telling them we love them. They were very sad and began to say to him, one after another, "Surely you don't mean me." They're not really sad. They're just wanting to find out who is going to betray. Is it me? But woe to the man who betrays the Son of Man. It says it would be better for him if he had never been born. And you never really have to pick out the guilty one. They always usually speak up. Then Judas, the one who would betray him, said, "Surely you don't mean me, Rabbi." And Jesus answered, "You have said so." While they were eating, Jesus took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and gave it to all the disciples, saying, "Take it." And then he went on to drinking. Basically, our descriptions. Then finally, he's in the garden. He's with his inner circle. John the Beloved, Peter. I'm not sure if there was another one or not. Usually when Jesus went into a home or to pray, he would take Peter and he would take John the Beloved. He wouldn't take them because they were his favorites. He would take them because they were the ones that were in charge or commanded to have his back. And if you read that, he would tell them, "Stay here and pray." And he would go off a little bit farther and pray himself. And then he would come back and they'd be asleep. Not like sleeping on the job, right? We know that it comes down to the garden. The soldiers come, and the understanding for the soldiers to know who to get is by a kiss. And so Judas walks in with these soldiers and gives him a kiss. And then they walk in to arrest him. If you continue to read this story, they ask him, Jesus, this is one of the only times Jesus speaks up throughout his arrest. And here it begins. They asked him who he was, and he told them that I am him. I am who you say I am. They arrest him. Peter is going to be his buddy, and he's going to cut off the ear of the soldier. So now, think about this. Think about the things we put people that's in charge in our life. So the dude's being arrested. Peter's probably thinking I'm helping out. I'm cutting his ear off. Next time, aim for the hands. Anyways, and here Jesus has to rebuke. I mean, it's already bad enough he's being arrested. One of his own disciples has betrayed him for money. And now he has to clean up the mess of a disciple. Who knows better? So now I'm arrested. I'm dying. I'm dead. My friend betrayed me. Not just betrayed me, but he even gave me a kiss in betrayal. I'm standing here before the enemy. One of my other disciples now decides that he's going to take charge and cut off the ear. We do this all the time. This was the passage that God spoke to me about and said, when people come against you, shut up, sit down, and go on with life. Do not be a Peter. Why? Because what happened? Peter got rebuked. Peter didn't get blessed. Jesus didn't say, you well and faithful servant. He rebuked him. You know why? Because he was still God to all those soldiers. And he was still going to die for those soldiers. And remember, when you come into the brotherhood, it's no longer about your life. It's about, remember, I say it all the time, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about him. The ear being cut off is very significant. How does faith come? You ain't got an ear, how are you going to get faith? So even though Jesus is being arrested, some real drama is happening with ears, and Jesus cares enough about this man that is arrested that he picks up the ear and heals him, just on the pretense that maybe one day he will hear the gospel and receive it. He's still in front of his enemies, showing love, compassion, understanding. He's keeping the peace. He's not arguing. He knows authority and obedience. They had authority to arrest him. Remember, he left his authority up there. Whether we like it or not, the law is the law. And there's two laws. There's the spiritual law and there's the natural law. And according to Scripture, he wants us to obey both. The only time that we're allowed to cut one out or the other is if the natural law contradicts the spiritual law. Meaning, if they would come in and try to take away all your Bibles, you have the right to fight against it. So he was a man that, even though he had authority, he could have had them all slayed right then. He could have called the 10 million angels down. And he didn't. So he was arrested, and he kept his mouth shut. He didn't have to say anything to it. He didn't go to him and say, you betrayer. You no good piece of crap. I mean, think about the things that you would say if you had 5 minutes alone. That person that betrayed you. You know, that person that slept with your partner, or, you know, that person that stole from you, or, you know, betrayed you. I'm not talking about, you know, just somebody that you don't like, or somebody that just said something. I'm talking about somebody that sneaky betrayed. So what happened to Judah? Conviction. Conviction. He went. He threw the money at the people that gave it to him. I wonder if we carry blood now. I wonder if we have sold out some of our time, some of our energy, some of our gifts, some of the things that we were supposed to do for God, and sold out for money, Because we had our eyes on the money and not Jesus. That just came to me. Not part of my sermon. I may have to pray about that. It says he threw the money at those that gave it to him. Now, those that gave it to him were not held accountable. However, they didn't take the money because it was blood money. Remember I said blood and money cannot mix. Because they are in opposition of one another. The blood covers and cures. This money was money to kill. Kill, steal, and destroy. Where blood gives what? Life, and life more abundantly. It's the type and shadow of Satan and Jesus. In war. So, conviction comes. Anybody ever been under conviction? How many likes that? I don't. Conviction comes. He tells them he sinned. However, he doesn't repent. How many times have we been under conviction? Maybe even sorry for what we did. But we didn't make it right. Which means we didn't repent. Maybe I didn't like what I did. Maybe I'm even sorry for what I did. But I didn't go to God and make it right. There's a process. It ate him alive so bad that he killed himself. So, what they say is Judah sold Jesus out for enough money to buy a graveyard. Because that's what they did. Blood money is death money. So they went and bought a plot of land. And that's where they're buried. A soul wound, a betrayal. It's real. It's alive. It's crafty. It's undercover. And no one is exempt from it. And most of the time, it's from the inside. And that's what hurts so much. If you're here and you need prayer this morning, I invite you to come up and we're going to pray. If not, I pray that you stand up and Brian's going to turn on a little bit of music so that you can soak in the presence of the Lord. And maybe God has showed you a snake or showed you something that's going on for you to deal with. Maybe he hasn't. And maybe bring that part to the Lord.
I know it's all you've got to just be strong. And it's a fight just to keep it together. I know you think that you are too far gone, but hope is never lost. Hope is never lost. Hold on, don't let go. Yeah. Hold on, don't let go. Just stay one step closer. One foot in front of the other. You get through it. Just follow the light. You're gonna be okay. I know your heart is heavy from those nights. Just remember that you are a fighter. You never know just what tomorrow holds. Stronger than you know, stronger than you know. Hold on, don't let go. Hey, hold on, don't let go. Just stay one step closer. One foot in front of you. Just follow your mind, darling. Stay closer. One foot in front of you. Just follow your mind, darling. You're gonna be okay. When the night is closing, don't give up and don't give in. This won't last, it's not the end, it's not the end. You're gonna be okay. When the night is closing, don't give up and don't give in. This won't last, it's not the end, it's not the end. You're gonna be okay. What can I do for you? What can I bring to you? What kind of song would you like me to sing? Cause I'll dance and dance for you, pour out my love to you. What can I do for you, beautiful king? What can I do for you? What can I bring to you? What kind of song would you like me to sing? Cause I'll dance and dance for you, pour out my love to you. Yeah. Cause I can't thank you enough. Cause I can't thank you enough. What can I do for you? What can I bring to you? What kind of song would you like me to sing? I'll dance and dance for you, pour out my love for you. What can I do for you, beautiful king? What can I do for you? What can I bring to you? What kind of song would you like me to sing? Cause I'll dance and dance for you, pour out my love for you. Cause I can't thank you enough. Oh, I can't thank you enough. All of the words that I tried, can't thank you enough. Pour out my life, can't thank you enough.
And God's good.
You say don't have to do a thing. Simply be with me and let the seas fade and wait another minute. This moment is too sweet. Please stay here with me and love on me a little longer. Oh, hear you say you don't have to do. Simply stay with me and let those things go. We can wait another minute. Oh, just once, it's too sweet. Please stay here with me and love on me a little longer. 'Cause I love you. 'Cause I love you. 'Cause I love you. Jesus, my heart it burns for you. Jesus, my heart it burns for you.
God is so good. We just can't praise him enough. I'm thankful for all that he has done and all that he's doing. I am thankful that for a team of leadership that is saying, I want to deny myself and I want to bear my cross and I want to count the costs and I want to be a part. And you know, that's just always my prayer. God, I just want to be in the middle of what you're doing. I don't have to always know what you're doing. I don't even always have to be at it. I just want to be a part of it. We know that we will have a leadership class on the 25th. We will also then on Sunday nights take 10 weeks to do some courses. We will eventually begin to develop some trainings for us to go through. Because I believe that God has gifted many people to do many things. And if we all operate in our gifts, then we become better. You're going to see changes. There's more of this to come. Those that are in it, there's a lot going on. So pray that I will follow God's agenda, that God will provide the finances that need to be provided to do those things. Pray for Kathy and Sean because they are going, they just are, according to what God has shown me, the umbilical cord that does not free us up from inviting people. And I would have to say that probably if we gave an honest report card of us being fishers of men, we probably haven't done so well. So if we are going to put and project on them that they are an umbilical cord of winning the lost, then we ourselves should raise up that bar. Because if they see that we're doing it too, then they don't feel like it's all on me. They are just called to be evangelists, and being evangelists, they're doing the first step. They're taking on a bus ministry. We know that in and of itself is wrong. Pray for our Wednesday nights. Pray that they grow. Pray that the adults, we always have to have 5 or 6 people, the 2 teachers downstairs, one that can step in as a teacher if a teacher isn't here, people up here. Pray that people stay committed. People stay faithful. Pray that lives are changed, that kids are changed. Pray that God will open doors for us to get more kids. Pray that God will make time for Kathy and Sean to go door knocking. I sent them videos on what they need to do to build Westminster. You know, it's like I said, make it happen. Some people want it, some people wish it, and then there's those that say, I'll do it. We have a huge vision here at Impact 365. And it can't happen without all of us saying, we're going to do our part. And just remember, in the midst of this soul wound series, we're going to be healed, and we're going to be strong foundation for these new people to come. Because they're going to come full of snakes and full of soul wounds and full of junk in their trunk. And we have to be able to not play with it, but be able to love them, to grow them, so that they too will want to be a part of what we are. Bless one another, take somebody to lunch, encourage each other, check on each other throughout the week. Check on people that have been here in the past, that I've even contacted people that have betrayed me. I'm just like, well, God, this is about you, not me. Come betray me. But that's how bad I want this thing. It's not that I want it to be what I want it to be. I want to see the altar flooded with people that want Jesus. I want people wanting to get in that tank that truly isn't getting in that tank because it's just the next step or somebody's pressuring, but that they're jumping in it because they know they have to take on his name. And I want people filled with the Holy Ghost because they want it, not because they're pressured. And then I want people to want to steadily get better. I want to hear people getting delivered. I mean, don't you want to hear somebody testify that they're no longer drinking, or they're no longer beating their spouse, or let's be real. They're no, that God gave them a job because they could pass a drug test finally. That's what I'm ready for. Remember, our appearance counts. You don't have to be in a suit, but our appearance counts. The building of our appearance counts. Remember to, after service is over, to sweep through the church and get it all cleaned up and ready for the next service. The other thing I want you to do is I want you to be conscious of what needs to be done. And what I mean by that is, walk through and think, if I was a new person, would I notice this? Or, like the mirror not being on the wall. What's that say? It says we're lazy. That's what it said me. Somebody don't want to put it up. Walk through. See what needs to be done. And then ask God, what can I do to make sure something gets done? I'm not asking one person to do everything. I've done it. It's hard. But all of us working together, oh my God, can you only imagine if we all, in all reality, if we all take ownership of this ministry, what could rock against it? No. God bless you all.